No, he can hear you now.
Mayor, can you hear us? Check. Mayor?
Or are you ignoring us?
His mic off.
Can you hear us? Oh, no. Let's do it.
It's gonna make this meeting greater.
He should be able to hear us.
Mayor, can you hear us? You're on mute.
Yes, I can hear.
We have a quorum.
Sorry about that.
We have a quorum and you can start the meeting.
Okay. So I'll just go ahead and call the meeting to order right now at 6:03. Welcome. Hold on. Welcome to the special session of the Solvang City Council Financial Community Workshop for January 27th, 2022. Call the meeting to order at 6:04. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Marani. Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Infante.
I told you, no drinking. Here.
Councilmember Arona, absent. Councilmember Thomas, absent. Mayor Urick.
Present. Tried to find the agenda on here. What is the next item on here?
Next item would be Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Council, Mayor Pro Tem, not Arona, but Infante, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'd happy to, thank you.
Please stand and your hand over your heart. People do again.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One second here. It does not look like we have any space for public comments, so do we just go right into the item number 1? Is that the way this should work for tonight?
Yes.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 1?
Financial Plan Community Workshop. Discussion with public participation regarding the development of the City of Solvang's 2-year financial plan. Additional materials will be posted.
Is there a staff report?
Yes, Mayor and Council, the purpose of today's presentation is to hold a community workshop, which is really a beginning of the process for developing the next 2-year financial plan. So we're here today on Thursday, the 27th. We have both participation options for here in person, and we have a few members with us and of the public, and we also have an option for community to make any comments online via Zoom. This is, like I said, is the first step in the development. The next goal session is going to be on February 26th. But today we are here to receive comment from the community and also any comments that the council may have in preparation for the next goal setting session on February 26th. So I wanted to first start with kind of taking a step back and looking at where we are today. And so currently we are in the second year of a 2-year financial plan, the fiscal year 21-22. And you will see in the budget book, which is available on our website, that there were certain priorities that kind of guided the work programs that we focused on or are focusing on this year. And so one of those priorities that we've been working on this year was to foster tourism industry and promote Solvang's unique character as travel destination. Some of those key elements were investment in marketing, branding strategy, establishment of tourism advisory committee, and then also a couple of hotel development opportunities which are still in the works. Those are larger projects that are potentially going to be considered by the city, which is the hotel project or a mixed-use project at the old lumber yard, and also the Alisal Range expansion. The next priority for the current year is what everybody has been engaging in, is the development of Solvang's vision and guiding principles and promoting desired change through planning and design. The key projects there are the general plan update, which is the process that we've been working on for about a year now. We're about halfway through, and we'll be really diving into development of the elements going forward. The next priority was to foster economic development and support business community through COVID-19. Some of the key programs were support of businesses by allowing temporary encroachment permits to allow businesses to expand outdoors while the COVID was still in effect or affecting the community in one way or another, and also to ensure timely processing of applications through Design Review Committee and Planning Commission. We've actually been rather busy, and our downtown doesn't have any vacancies in the business community, which is great. So despite COVID, we've been busy with new businesses, new signage, rather a busy business community. The next one is to ensure fiscal sustainability. The key programs in this year were the general plan fee study, which was completed and adopted and is now in effect. We've also completed the cost allocation study, which is the charges between the different funds within the city. We are in progress of the utility rate study, and the next workshop will be on February 12th before that process continues on, and with the expectation that new rates will be set starting in July. And then we'll be embarking on an impact fee study. That's the development impact fees. So we'll be working on that in conjunction or in parallel with the general plan update. The current budget priority number 4 would be to be desired place to live. Here we have recreation programs, investment in parks. So we have our improvements that we are working on through a grant at the HCA park. And we also have some budget set aside in this year for a capital improvement program at the Solvang Park to make some improvements. We're also working on the housing element update for the general plan update and focusing on affordability and creating additional housing. And we'll be working on, or continue to work on multi-mode transportation goals, which we actually have good ridership on our transit that's been increasing, and it's back up from where it was before COVID. We are also working on a general plan circulation element update. And we completed a rather large project this year, which was the Alisal Road pavement project, which was funded by Measure A. Goal number 5 was to provide community with safe and reliable water. The key programs there is the River Wells project that's been ongoing. The groundwater sustainability plan has been adopted, and we are part of the Eastern Management Area working on that. And we completed phase 1 of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, which was a $3 million project and was most critical update to that plant. The next focus is to maintain authentically appealing image throughout the city. Key programs there are increased trash pickup, bathrooms cleaning, sidewalks cleaning. The DRC, we have more than doubled the sidewalks clean this year with COVID-19, as well as have made significant increases in the number of trash pickups and the cleaning of the public bathrooms. The DRC has strong oversight of the design guidelines, making sure that all the development, especially in downtown, is adhering to the specific look and architecture of the city of Solvang. And we also have increased code enforcement efforts this year as well. The next focus was to foster organizational effectiveness, and this has been quite a bit of an effort, recovering from COVID-19 pandemic. So we've completed reorganization and filled 10 positions. There's a couple of vacancies still to be filled, but we are almost there and fully staffed and back to normal operating levels. We've also updated the employee handbook, invested in information technology, implemented permitting software, and are in the process of updating the city websites, both the marketing site and the city official website. So this just shows current allocations and how the money is allocated by different areas. So city council encompasses a few, it's not just all city council, there's, for example, the Solvang library is in there at $175,000. But those are, various programs that are not necessarily assigned to a specific other operation. The administrative services is all of your finance and general administration. We have our recreation programs, information technology. There was an increase that you see in 21 and 22. That's just because of the budgeting allocation and consolidating all of the budget, which before was split between general fund, water and wastewater funds. And then we have our building and planning function, marketing, tourism, and public safety, which is law enforcement. The next department we have is the Public Works Department, and that encompasses the engineering function, the maintenance function, and the stormwater management. And then the third department that we have at the city is the Utilities Department, and there you see we have water supply and distribution, we have the sewer collection, and specifically the wastewater treatment plant operations. This is just a summary of the last capital improvement program funding that was adopted with the current fiscal year 21-22 budget, and those were both adopted allocations for 21-22, and then forecast and proposed program going forward. So today we'll focus on talking about major operating funds, which are the general fund, the water, and then sewer and wastewater treatment plant we usually talk about as one operating fund, which is the wastewater treatment or wastewater fund. Transit is primarily funded by federal and state grants with a little bit from ridership, and then we have the Measure A program that this year paid for the Alisol repavement project. And then we also have some balance in the impact fees, which can be applied to certain qualifying projects. And then, of course, there's the SB1 tax dollars as well. So this chart here shows the major operating funds, and this is kind of the projection, just to give, these are not exact numbers, even though you see pretty precise numbers here, but once we really work through the budget and update it with all the latest, insurance rates, salary and benefit latest detail, then those numbers will shift some. But this is just to give us kind of a general idea of where we are in terms of our fund balances and what would be the forecast going forward. So this one is meant to be looked at from top to bottom. So if you start on the top of this chart, you will see, for example, for the general fund, we had about $6.1 or $2 million in unrestricted balance. And restricted balance means it's not already committed by a contract, or it's also not set aside by policy. So that's how much we have available. There's some spending that happens in the current year, and our fund balance at the end of this year is expected to drop to about $4.9 million. And that's because of capital improvement projects. And then there's projections of the projected revenue and projected operating expenditures based on current levels. And then we look at, well, what's available as a fund balance plus the difference between the revenue and expenditure. And so when we get to 22-23 in the general fund, we have about $5.5 million that's available for allocation. And then the line below that is just a rough estimate. So if there was a desire to do any one-time investments in infrastructure, one-time expenditures, I think it's reasonable to say that, up to $2 million, for example, could be allocated in that year towards that kind of projects. And then the same goes for the next year, for the 23-24, which if we invested, up to $2 million in infrastructure within those 2 years, we would end up with a balance of about $1.7 million in our unrestricted balance. So that's a general fund, and it's a structurally balanced fund where you can see that the revenues actually do exceed the expenditures. Now, as we move towards the water and wastewater, it's not quite as good a picture, as our revenues are not meeting our ongoing expenditures. You will see here that if there was no rate increase, we would currently we have $6.5 million in the fund balance. We are expecting to drop at the end of this year to 4.7. And our revenue projections for next year are 4.7 million, while our expenditures are 5.4. So we are already not operating in a balanced environment. There is some room, because we have healthy fund balance right now, to make one-time allocations. And so you see there $1 million and then only 500 in the second year as a maximum allocation, which would drop us to about $1.4 million in the fund balance. The wastewater, unfortunately, is in a negative position. We're expecting that the wastewater fund will drop to negative $300,000 by the end of this fiscal year, and will continue to drop to where at the end of the 2-year period we would be at almost $1 million in the negative if there's no rate increases. And so I went in and created a scenario to show what would happen if there was a rate increase for water and wastewater. And these are, once again, just rough numbers. We're still kind of working through that study and making sure that it's accurately reflecting what we need and is as smooth and increases over the years as possible. We'll once again tweak those recommendations as needed after the workshop on February 12th based on community input. But if we were to plug in what our rough estimates right now for rate increases, you will see that the water in the same type of spending pattern would be at about $1 million more in fund balance by the end of, by 6/30/24, and wastewater would actually finally get back into the positive of $360,000. And just a reminder that it's always recommended that at least 3 months of operating expenditures be in the fund balance, and that is the bare minimum. So with this, let's take a look at just some comparisons between Solvang versus average California city. So this chart here shows the revenue derived from different sources. That's the typical funding for a municipality. And you will see that on the right, California cities get majority of their funding by property tax. Second funding source is sales and use tax, and then TOT. In case of Solvang, we are very high on being funded by TOT, or the bed hotel tax. Our second highest revenue source is sales tax. Of that, also about 60% is estimated to be derived from tourism industry. And then our next source is the property tax. So this here shows that the city of Solvang is the third most dependent city in the state of California on tourism. You will see that on the far left. There's a couple of cities that are ahead of us, which is Mammoth Lakes and Yountville. Those are the top two, but we are number 3. So you will see that our reliance is heavily on TOT and not heavily, we're way to the left on sales tax. And you'll see that majority of the cities are kind of clustered right there in the middle, a little bit more balanced from those two sources. So at the last council meeting, when we discussed steps forward for financial plan development, there was some discussion and desire to look at numbers and hypothetical, what if an increase was to be proposed to these two sources. So the city of Solvang current occupancy tax is 12%. We receive all of it. The city is also part of the Santa Ynez Tibet, which is managed by the Visit SYV, and their current assessment is $3 per room. That money is just a pass-through. We receive the 12%. So 12%, and you can see a comparison of jurisdictions there, that majority of the more tourism-oriented cities in Santa Barbara County and Santa Barbara County itself are at 12%, and then Santa Maria and Lompoc, being the more bedroom communities, are a little bit lower, 10%, and Guadalupe doesn't have any hotels. So the TOT that we derive at about normal levels, about $4.5 million a year for the 12% collected. So if you increase it by 1%, obviously, because it's a smaller increase in terms of the proportion to the 12%, we only will get about $375,000 from that. 0.5%, I just divided by 2, is about 187. So it would take a larger increase in proportion in terms of the percent to reach higher numbers. Now, when it comes to sales tax, the city of Solvang current sales tax payable, so if anybody buys anything in Solvang, they pay 7.75%. The city of Solvang receives 1% of that. Majority of that tax is retained by the state of California. An average tax, according to the legislative analyst report, is 8.75% on average in California. The city of Solvang does not have any local sales tax, and the 1% that we currently generate is about $1.4 million. So if the city of Solvang was, for example, to consider a 1% increase in sales tax, we would actually get an equivalent of what we receive today, which is $1.4 million. If there's any questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, I got all kinds of questions. But at this point, you're saying a 1% sales tax, if we increase it, it goes completely to Solvang, nothing goes to the state.
Correct. If it was a local tax, everything would go to us.
And 1% increase would get it up to 1.4 million increase to us.
Correct.
And it would put us in line with the state average sales tax, which you said, I believe, was 8.5?
Correct. Yes.
Very interesting. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, was it 8.25 or 8.75? The 8 3/4 was the average.
8.5, 8.5.
8.5, okay, thank you.
Is the average.
That is the average, and that was actually based on data from 2015, so it's a little outdated, but it's probably higher now because local sales taxes have become more and more prevalent, and most jurisdictions have a local tax.
So we're at we are at 7.75.
Correct.
We went up a point to 8.75, we'd be above the state average. But a 0.5 point would bring us up to, what, 8 1/4? And that would give us more money than a 1% increase in TOT.
Correct.
And either way, voters have got to approve it.
Well, yeah, we have to go to the public to approve it, but still, that's a fascinating, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the TOT is considered a special tax that would have to go on a special election, which the one that's coming up in 2022 is a special election, and that would require 2/3 of voters to approve. The sales tax can be either special, which means you have to define what kind of expenditures it can be used for, in which case it would have to go on a special election and also requires 2/3 vote. It could otherwise be a general tax, which is just general revenue, just like the 1% we receive right now, and that would require only a majority voter approval, but it would have to wait until general election, which would be in 24.
Okay.
So with that, that's the TOT and the sales tax. Another option that has been brought up is a business improvements district formation. That is a little bit of a different arrangement to help fund specific expenditures that benefit the district that formed. So this type of district could be formed based on the property owners or business owners. So it could be within a geographic location or a type of business. So for example, for the city of Solvang, there could be a business improvement district within the TRC assessed on all of the parcels, so all of the properties that would then fund projects that benefit those properties. So those could be your infrastructure, sidewalks, cleaning, any beautification of the area that would form that or help that. The business improvement district can be formed by city council action, resolution, and that would need to be a notice mailed to all of the properties that are under the assessment within the proposed district, and it would take a majority protest for the district not to be formed. If a district was formed by such council action, the oversight would be by a board appointed by the council, which could be a board such as the TAC, for example, or a nonprofit organization. And the rates, of course, are subject to development and how much money you would want to generate. So, yes.
I had a question back on that one, if I may.
Yes, ma'am?
Can you bring that slide back up? On the very first sentence for the business improvement, it's an assessment on property owners or business owners. Is it one or the other? It can't be both?
It would be one or the other. So the options are to assess it based on the property as well, which would be basically a tax assessment, which is a little bit easier to collect. And the other option is to assess a fee or a tax on the business owners within some geographical location, which can also be by type. So for example, you could do that for lodging, but we already have other assessments on lodging. So probably the most recommended and easiest way of doing this would be to assess a tax on property owners within a specific geographic location, which then would benefit those properties.
Well, that'll make you a whole lot of new friends.
So with that, I'd like to just turn towards some preliminary review of the survey that was published actually only on Monday of this week, the 24th. We had 47 responses as of yesterday. We've got about 57 or so today, so they're coming in day by day, and we'll continue to collect the information. The survey is available online at our website, and it will be open until February 11th. On February 11th, at the end of the business day, we will close the survey and prepare the information for council consideration for the goal setting session on February 26th. But there's already some interesting data that's starting to come in from just the 47 responses. I tried to gauge the questions to help us understand where the community feels there needs to be more attention so that we could possibly develop some programs for the next financial plan, of course, with your goals and your priorities set for us first. But the first question is, I believe the city should invest more in the following infrastructure categories. And so you will see that the number one winner so far is parking. People feel that the city should be investing more in parking. And the next one is traffic improvements, and followed by the water and sewer infrastructure as a combined. Downtown beautification is also fairly high. The next question was to assess people's willingness to accept some of these revenue generating options. So the question was, rate your agreement with the statements. And so the first question was about sales tax. And you will see that we're asking, would you support a sales tax measure, essentially? And that's a pretty even response, but it is definitely the one that so far has collected the most of the strongly disagree. However, more than half is more on the neutral versus and agreeing side. The next one is people's sensitivity to issuance of debt to help us with our infrastructure. And there you see a lot less of a strongly disagree, and the highest is neutral or agreement. Neutral is actually the highest for that one. And then we also asked about the option of the downtown business improvement district. Once again, there's not a lot of strongly disagreeing so far, and there is a pretty strong sense for agreement or strong agreement for that. Next question is parking, and we wanted to gauge, there's different issues with parking, so what type of parking strategies would the community be amendable to? So this was just to say, so in order for the city to, should develop the following parking strategies and improvements to manage parking, provide with additional parking spaces in downtown, and address spillage of visitors parking in residential areas. So people are in favor generally of additional parking structures, of building underground parking. Placing time limits on parking doesn't seem to be very favorable. Charging for parking in downtown is also mostly neutral, some disagree, some agree. And then of course, improved wayfinding and signage is actually getting a good response. Q9 is Copenhagen Closure, and we wanted to continue to follow up and keep up with that conversation of gauging people's agreement or disagreement as to whether they want to see Copenhagen Drive closed or not. So the first question was open without a dollar amount, which just asked, would you like to see Copenhagen closed? And we get in more on the strongly agree. Some disagree and some strongly disagree. But when we add a rough estimate of $3 million to this question, whether people would be in favor of creating a permanent closure and a walk-in promenade and invest $3 million, which is somewhere, this would be a permanent full improvement, but it's probably mid-ground of what the real estimate might be. So here we're getting mostly maybe with more information. And the yes is definitely not the first choice at this point. So more conversations to be had on this topic, and we'll be bringing that as a separate item to City Council as well. This was just a fairly general question about economic development, just to see where the community stands in terms of tourism, which is the main economy for City of Solvang, whether people feel that there is too much, too little, just right. I'm sorry you can't read all of the answers there, but the first one would be that the city invests not enough, the second one, the city invests just right, and then the city invests too much. So the blue bar is the one that's getting the most responses, and that is the one that says that the current investment is just right. Next question was about parks and recreation, and we're asking whether the city should invest more in the following facilities or service levels. And I'd say that the one that really stands out, or the two that stand out, is the Veterans Memorial Building. There's quite a bit of agreement going on that more should be invested in that facility, and then we'll also get in quite a bit of agreement that we should be investing more in public restrooms. The next one is law enforcement, and we asked whether people agreed or disagreed with the following statements. The city provides adequate level of law enforcement, the city provides adequate level of traffic enforcement, and the city provides adequate level of code enforcement. And looks like majority think that we do provide, there's adequate law enforcement and traffic enforcement, and we're neutral on code enforcement. For public works, we wanted to gauge whether we are investing sufficiently in the following programs, and I would say that these preliminary results show that there is a desire to increase in investment in downtown and its aesthetics. Garbage pickup is in the neutral, but there's some agreement that we should do more of that. Public facilities maintenance and cleaning, there's a lot of agreement, so we'll have to explore that more. Road maintenance, once again more in agreement, and something is Valley Transit seems to be probably just right, and street cleaning is actually primary neutral as well. Next one is utilities. The city should invest more money in the following. Here we wanted to look or ask questions about the utilities infrastructure. So the first question is about upgrading water infrastructure to remain in compliance with regulatory requirements. There seems to be understanding from the sample that that is something that the city would have to invest in. Construction of new or updated water production sources. We're also getting primarily agreement. Upgrading water storage, strongly agreement. Upgrade water meter infrastructure, neutral. Upgrade wastewater infrastructure to remain in compliance with regulatory requirements, also agreement. And then upgrade wastewater collection and treatment infrastructure to remain reliable and sufficient. We are also in agreement there. This was a general catch-all question just to see where people, once again, based on the services that the city provides, where people thought that most additional investment should be focused on. And once again, the really big ones here is investment in water infrastructure is number one, and then parking is our issue number two. So the goal setting process where we are today is the step one, it's community input. We're hoping to receive all of the input both here at this meeting as well as through the surveys, which will once again continue to run through February 11th. On February 26th, the City Council will have its goal setting session, which will once again be a public meeting where the public will continue to be able to provide input. And then staff will go ahead and take the goals that are set by City Council, and we'll develop proposed programs to achieve those goals, and then present to you based on available revenue options that we can recommend, and deliverables. We'll present it to your program that is aligned with those goals. So goal setting on February 26th, once again will be a council meeting with public participation. We would ask that the council formulate the goals, which will drive staff development of recommendations on how to achieve those goals and the associated costs through the financial plan development. So that would be the preliminary financial plan that will be presented to you in May for your comment before the final plan is developed for adoption in June. The goals should be purpose-driven and forward-focused. The goals will be set for the 2-year term and should be actionable and measurable. The goals can be strategic and can be long-term focused beyond the financial plan timeframe, but the programs that can be achieved for the 2-year plan should be definable and formulated and can reflect a milestone towards that longer term direction. So I just wanted to throw a couple of examples on one of the biggest issues that the public had commented on, the water infrastructure. So these are from two different cities, but you can see a lot of common themes within these two, and I think with a lot of the programs that we are already working for water infrastructure at the city of Solvang. So the first one is the goal is water supply conservation and Central Coast Blue sustainability. So that's a coastal community. There's a statement to sustain city's water supply by completing Central Coast Blue and pursuing access to new, high quality and reliable water resources, promoting conservation and conducting public outreach and education. And then there's the priorities that are more defined for the 2-year environment, for the 2-year plan, which is to implement Central Coast Blue, promote water conservation, and pursue additional water supplies, etc. The one on the bottom is another example around the same issue, and that is to work towards water independence. And then there is objectives that are attainable within that time frame, which is to provide ongoing education to customers, pursue additional water supplies, develop additional storage, develop equitable rate structure, and establish rates sufficient to cover those costs. I think that one looks almost very familiar. So the next steps, once again, just to remind you that and to remind the public that the next workshop that is the City Council Goals session on February 26th. It will be at 10 a.m. here at the City Hall, and we'll also have the Zoom option as we continue to have COVID. And in March and April, the Council will review grant funding requests, Senior Center Theater Fest requests for assistance. And then in May, staff will present to you the preliminary financial plan, which will include both operating programs and capital improvement program in alignment with the goals that you set on the 26th. Any questions? That concludes my presentation.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
I don't have any.
No, not at this time, thank
It
you.
was a good report.
Yeah.
I had just a couple, real quick, and it was mainly on the agenda. And it was in the section where the budget going forward, we have law enforcement and public safety, and we only have law enforcement listed as, where's fire in this? Because that is an ongoing expense, it is public safety. And how about medical services, or is that separate? Because I'm understanding going forward that that may be broken out of some of the future budgets coming down the road. And I may be wrong, I thought that was what I overheard, that fire and AMR services or ambulance services would be done separately. And where is that in the budget under, and why is it not under public safety and it's only law enforcement?
So we are part of the county fire district, which is an assessment or an allocation of property tax that pays for that service. It's completely under the county umbrella. The contract for the AMR is also, for the ambulance is also handled through the county. So that does not enter our city budget.
And why can't we get law enforcement to do that?
Law enforcement is a contract, so it's a direct payment.
You might have a better
All
chance of
right.
answering that than we do.
Yeah.
It's a sheriff that wants to defund the police.
Yeah, there you go. I did want to ask on our lawn, in the budget, again, on the agenda, there was an item where we had law enforcement and code enforcement on the same line item. I can't remember exactly what page it was. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Is in one of those budget outlines there, Zena?
Is it page 10?
Yeah, that, let me just get to page 10 real quick. Or, let's see, 7, 8.
I don't see it.
There's a line item where it's showing it as, where is it? I'm not seeing it come up on mine under 10. Let's see.
Which two items, Mr. Mayor?
It was two items that said, law enforcement under our public safety budget line. It was law enforcement and then it said code enforcement, and I'm not, why am I not seeing it now?
Look at page 4, but it's not, they're not together. It's, maybe it's not the page 4 one is not the one you're talking about then.
So on page 10, there is a listing. It says that it's recommended that the city council set its goals based on the major operating functions that the city has. And there we have the major operating functions that are listed are the city governance, which is administration, finance, and information technology. Then we have the tourism and marketing, recreation, planning, and then there's law enforcement, including code enforcement. That was just to highlight that both law enforcement and code enforcement serve the purpose of law enforcement, which is different. Code enforcement obviously only enforces the city code, while law enforcement, as far as the sheriff contract, is enforcing our state, federal, and county laws.
That is on page 10.
Yeah, top of the page, too.
Why am I not finding that?
Under recreation and planning on page 10.
That's
Yeah,
the third line at the top of the page.
am I looking at the same budget? My page 10 doesn't show that, it just shows a graph.
Oh,
Oh,
no, there's two page 10s.
We keep things.
Go to the next page 10.
Mayor, I think you're looking at the Monday's agenda.
No.
Well, just pull it up on the screen again yourself.
It was,
In the first section.
is it on your screen? The only reason I was asking is that, and I understand code enforcement is dealing with the building or the municipal codes, but wouldn't that be more under planning because that's really who they're dealing with as opposed to law enforcement going out and doing, I mean, I know they could do parking tickets but mainly what we have our code enforcement is dealing with our sign ordinances and sheds, things related to planning and development as opposed to public safety. So I guess that's all.
Right, and if I may, and that is something that you can definitely as council discuss as part of the next financial plan development, but under our current organization, code enforcement actually falls under administration. It is typical a lot of times if there's we have a contracted city attorney who is once some of the larger jurisdictions, code enforcement falls under city attorney's office because it's really the city attorney that's the chief prosecutor. And it can be planning items, and it can be any other municipal code that they enforce. For example, non-payment of a business license, code enforcement also enforces that.
Okay. And then getting back to the special district elections, if we went 1% in, and now this is just hypothetical, just throwing it out there, going to a 1% increase in tax, but it was only going to be allocated for the infrastructure type of stuff, would that be considered a special election, just a special district election as opposed to a general election?
So if the tax was defined to where it was to pay for specific items, such as roads and infrastructure, parks improvements, and there was a definition in how the ballot is drafted, then that's a special tax, and that requires 2/3 approval and has to be placed on a special election.
Okay, and I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. I just wanted to get that clarified in my head. So that election like that would not be happening this year. If in fact we ended up coming back to that, it would happen next year.
So that would be the 2022 election. You could have a ballot for such tax. All of the preparation and the drafting of the ballot and whatnot, arguments pro and against would have to, the deadlines are in the summertime. And obviously there would be recommended some outreach and maybe some polling of the community to see if that would be successful.
But we could do that on the November ballot.
Correct, I believe so. And we can follow up. So today, if you can provide any, general direction in terms of, what might be of interest to explore further, then we can explore further before we get to you on the 26th. Also, if there's anything specific that would be helpful for you for your goal-setting session, also happy to prepare any additional information for that. So any input that you can provide today, we would take and come back to you on the 26th.
I have a question. There's no way to break down the sales tax paid or collected by the city from residents versus visitors, is there?
There's not a complete scientific way of doing that, but we do have a lot of sales tax data that's
Geographic?
that's not for public consumption. We have a lot of data from specific businesses. And we know that majority, about 60% of our TOT or sales tax comes from the restaurants, dining, and retail. So those are the areas that are more tourism driven. Of course, there's some locals that wine and dine and shop at some of those shops as well. But those are the industries which are tourism driven industries.
That's good to know, because that's the only way I would support any sort of tinkering with the sales tax, is if the burden falls not so much on the residents as the visitors. Thank you.
If we look at the leakage of sales tax, see how much we lose to other jurisdictions, I would say that there's some evidence that some of the shopping that locals do is definitely done outside of the city.
Can I ask
Which
you-
then,
Sorry, go ahead.
which if another jurisdiction has local sales tax, then our residents pay that tax to that jurisdiction.
Yeah. Can I ask that you put that on the agenda for the TAC meeting coming up? I would like to hear what the Tourism Advisory Committee says about that. I know some of them are in favor of it. I don't know if all of them are, and I would like, and unfortunately I'm not gonna be able to attend that meeting, I have a conflict. But I would like to hear what they have to say about it.
Great, yes, of course. Is there any interest in looking further at development of the tourism or business improvement district?
No.
I would once again ask that you put that on the TAC agenda, we brought that committee together to help us figure out what to do to help with tourism and the impacts of tourism and so on and so forth. So I'd like to see what they have to say as well. I'm not sure that I favor it so much, and obviously Councilmember Clark does not. But I'd like to hear what everybody else says.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would support at least trying to figure out what could be for us in both the tax, a 1% increased sales tax. I know that we are, I think, at least the lowest, if not maybe us and a couple of other cities in the county. But there's a number of cities in our county that are even over at already at 9%. I think Carp is already at 9%, maybe a little bit more, and Guadalupe is over 9%. So it would be something that would be obviously a financial tool to be able to utilize to try to get the funds to assist everyone with our water and our wastewater upgrades and the debt that we are going to incur for that going forward.
And if I could add one more thing, getting back to the TOT, when I had asked at the previous meeting what other towns were, I was really more focused on your Cambrias, your Healdsburgs, your things like that, just to see what the spectrum is. If it's a low of 10, if there are cities in the 14% range, I forget what San Francisco is, but what, how high, what is the highest that other cities can get away with? And I'm not saying go that route, because I'm not in favor of going through all the process to bring in another, $300,000 or whatever. I don't think it's worth the effort. But it'd be nice to know what does Mammoth charge for TOT, places like that. I don't compare Solvang to Guadalupe and Santa Maria. I compare Solvang to very desirable destinations. No dig.
That is true, Councilmember Clark. I was not insinuating that we are that way. Just
No, I wasn't. That wasn't the reason I made that reply. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Another city that is somewhat similar in one way, and that's their population is Catalina Island. So down in that area, they had some serious infrastructure problems with their sewer lines, and ended up getting some grants for that to help assist with that, and then doing a lot of that CIPP in resin one, where they didn't have to do any open trenching or very little of it. So that would be another one where they do have a lot of tourism there. That is their primary driver as well, just very, very similar to what Solvang would be.
Then there's always Leavenworth. I mean, I know that's Washington State, but we helped put them together. They have a similar environment to ours and a similar size city. Actually, it's a little smaller, I think. Be curious to know what theirs is.
Of course. Yeah, good feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's all I have for comments. Is there, from here, it's hard to tell. It looks like there's only a few people on Zoom. Is there anyone in the house
Yes, Mayor.
there right now?
We have a few.
The house is packed, Mr. Mayor.
The house is packed, and we have a few speakers.
Is there anyone in the house that would like to speak?
The first speaker card that was turned in is from Jim Richardson.
Okay.
Good evening. Before I start, I want to give you a little bit of institutional background on the fire department. I was on the negotiating team, negotiated going from the volunteer fire department that Solvang used to have to the county. And in order to eliminate the problem that we're having with law enforcement billing, we made arrangements with the fire department to take half of our property tax receipts and pay for our share of being in the county fire districts. That had an advantage in that as inflation took up property tax, their revenues went up. If prices went down, their revenues went down, but we weren't tied to their expenses. We were just tied to their revenues. So and we also made an arrangement to bill them $1 a year for the use of the fire station. So that's a little background.
We should raise the rate to $2 a year.
You know, right.
100%.
But one of the things I told them, they had to take care of the plants out front too, because they sit around in chairs. Anyhow, I just want to take a second to thank you for your interest in I'm speaking as president of the board for the Senior Center. I want to take a second to thank you for your interest in our efforts to construct a new senior center, and one that will bring pride to the seniors who reside in the San Ynez Valley. And I was happy to see your commitment as spelled out in the financial plan. Under the paragraph titled Recommended Agency Request Funding, it states, the current City Council policy focuses on funding organizations that support humanitarian organizations with specific focus to assist seniors. So, which makes up a large demographic of the community. Now, that's in your financial plan. And because of that, I wanted to remind you that we're still here. In the past, you've been funding us under grant requests that have been fluctuating plus or minus about $50,000 a year. Last year it was $55,000. Those were for operational expenses. Now we're asking you to fund the Solvang Senior Center as a line item in your budget going forward. I heard the city manager mention the library as an aside. Maybe the senior center could be in that area. Again, I wanted to thank you for your continued support and recognizing that seniors are vibrant members of Solvang and the Valley communities. Now I want to turn some time over to Ellen Albertoni. She's the executive director of the Senior Center.
That's it?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you for your additional time. I just would like to reiterate and support what Jim Richardson had to say, but also to thank you for your increased interest and support of the center as we've been moving along with our wonderful project that we've all been excited about. We see that relationships take time, and they're like plants. You have to cultivate them and nurture them. And I see that happening more within our community. People know who we are, but now they really know who we are. And it's exciting to see that the council has found out how important we are. And as Jim said, we're going to be here for a long time. And we really want to continue to nurture and grow the partnership that we've been developing. And thank you for your support of our seniors. And we have an exciting future that we want you to all be part of because you will all be there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
If anybody would like to speak from the audience, please come up and state your name.
Yeah, I turned in a paper.
Bonnie Jacobson.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Bonnie Jacobson, president of the Friends of the Library here in Solvang. I want to keep the library in your thoughts. The Friends Group's purpose is to fund the library programs and special events such as summer reading program, book clubs, story time, craft kits, puppet shows, and we have an upcoming live performance of the humor of Abraham Lincoln. We're not equipped to fund normal operations. But in the past, we've been asked to contribute $20,000 a year for general operations of the Solvang branch to the main library of Goleta, who runs the operations of the libraries in their district. We can't afford this. We do not have an endowment. We have used up what little savings we had. $20,000 is a lot of bake sales. Our donors and our foundations want to fund special programs, not operations. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Friends of the Library, I'm requesting that the City of Solvang assume the obligation for operations that we have struggled to meet. The obligation is $20,000 a year. We encourage the city to step up and increase their investment in their library. And we request that this be part of the financial plan. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
That's the last one.
There's no one else in the, here in person?
Okay, do we have anyone out on Zoom? It looks like I'm only seeing a couple people.
I think it's all of our staff, Mayor, so no speakers on Zoom.
Okay.
Seeing none, just bringing it back for then final comments from anyone? Or direction. I think we've kind of given a little bit of a direction what we were looking for. Is there anything else that you thought about since?
Mr. Mayor, I think we've got some good things to work on, and we've got some serious decisions to make in the next few months, so I think we've got our work cut out for us.
Absolutely we do.
I would agree.
All right, well, with that, I don't have anything else on my agenda list. Did I miss something, Zena? City
No,
Manager?
You can adjourn the meeting.
All right, I now adjourn the meeting at 7:08. Thank you all for being here.
Thank
Thank you.
Take care of yourself, Mayor.
Yes, thank you.